Hey gang, welcome back. It is I, DrBossKey, and today I thought we would cover a requested tutorial. It's a pretty simple thing, but I thought I would go into it anyways, especially since I've been working on the item randomizer. So what this is, and let me just switch over here and I'll show you, is, oop, don't push that button. That's the wrong button push. Okay. Yeah, so what it is basically, let me just show and tell. All right. Is basically you have these items right here, item. So then they spawn, and then the player essentially, when they collect one of the items, then the other ones will disappear. So I'll go over how we did that, but let me just show you what we got so far. So
weapons up.
Yeah. And you can see with the little mini shield. And as you'd expect, then there's the super weapon. All right, so how do we do that? Short and sweet, this should be pretty quick. So there's a couple things you want to do. So one of the concepts here, and there's a little bit of a caveat, which is if you have on collision particles enabled right now with the player, which is right here, collision particles. So let me just enable that for me because I've been playing around with that a little bit. Then what will happen is this will also trigger essentially the particles because we're using fake enemies for these item spawners. So, and by using fake enemies, it gives us a few things we can do. We can attach them to the screen. They can follow through. There are other ways you could possibly set this up that would get around this, but it gives us the ability to do a few other things. So let's see, player shield on hit. All right, cool. So just to show you what that is, and you'll notice I have a little flash because I have an on-hit shield. I'm experimenting with that. But that is the caveat. There may come a version in the future. I've talked with Sunny to work around this. But for now, that's what it is. So, okay. So then in order to set this up, basically we have a trigger here. And the trigger, in this particular case, you could attach it to anything. It could be on death or a boss. There are other ways you could go about this. But for our purposes, we basically just set it to when it's viewed by the camera. And when that happens, so we have basically 3 enemy types. And these enemy types are essentially enemies that just have 1 HP in this particular case. And the important thing is that the collision is set to with player and the damage to the player is 0. Because what we want to have happen is when the player collides with either the power-ups, then we want the trigger condition to occur. But also, this means that because the player does damage to enemies when they collide with them, this will then remove the enemy, in this case, automatically. So here in collision under your player character, you can see here you have 2 enemies. So if the player collides with an enemy, how many HP he will lose. So and that's with the player colliding. So in this case, let me double check. So, oh yeah. So sorry, I misspoke. So that is your collision damage. What we actually want is, let me take a quick look. I don't think it's actually set in here now that I think about it. So yeah, your player collisions to collide with enemies. And what is the damage? I think there's a way to set damage. Maybe it's in the enemy. I got to take a look. Oh yeah. So, so that's, nope. Okay. Doesn't really matter that much. What you should be aware of is that when you have collisions with player and the damage to player set to 0, the player won't take any damage. The enemy will take damage from colliding with the player, and because the hit points are set to 1, then it automatically goes away. And I think if I just take a quick look, let me take a look. If I set that one to 10,
Super weapon online.
okay, so it doesn't really matter actually how many hit points it's set to. Yeah, so I'll have to dig that up and see if there's a setting for how much damage enemies take when they collide with the player. But regardless, you should be aware that that's a thing. So coming back to it. So then we have our trigger. when this is viewed by the camera, it basically activates all three of the power-ups. The power-ups are enemies, as I talked about. We gave them a little bit of a wiggle here in their animation setting. So in animation, you can set curves for the amplitude. So in this case, amplitude X, we made it 10. Y, we made it 10. It gives it a little bit of a wiggle, you know, because it's kind of fun. And there you can add other things, of course, as normal. And then what you want to do is you have the gameplay trigger. You have a second one here for each one of the enemies. And these gameplay trigger is set to connected enemy state is all dead. And it doesn't matter if it stays active or if it's switch mode in this case. And then once that enemy dies, then what we want to do is we have a kill condition, and we're going to kill the other two enemies without score an item and without explosion. You could do an explosion if you wanted to set this up, but right now, like that's just candy. So, and then the other thing that you want to do is, so we have made essentially we have the actual power-ups, we have the items, right? So you can see here if I go to items, that I can come over here and I have like a power-up P. So this is the item version of this, right? And in the item version, this isn't a tutorial on items. I basically set up what this item is supposed to do as you would do normally. Nothing else really changes in this space. If you do, so one of the things you might want to do is you might want to set your, okay. So in animation, what I have found in this particular case is that for these items, you might want special ones. You want to set your force. You want to set your force to 99 and leave your radius to infinite. So I have versions of power-ups that I don't want to fly into the player, but I have versions that I do. So let me take a look here. It's one of these. Power P should be this one. Yes, speed, force. Okay. All right. So the reason why you want to set your item up, let me take a look here. Maybe it's one of these guys. I want to make sure, because I'm doing this in my actual project and I don't want to change any global settings because I have them set up for very specific cases. So, but for instance, I know here, right, that the attraction to player force I have set in this particular case the 30, so you get close and then it sucks into the player. Basically what happens, right, is that your enemy fake item will then be associated with your real item, which is the spawn. And then you want to set it to 1, and you can tweak these parameters as you want. But basically what happens is that then it dies, it spawns the item version of this, and because you've set your animation to ideally force 99, it immediately sucks right into the player, right? So, and then the last thing is so we rinse and repeat this logic here, which is hey, when one of these is killed, kill the other two. And we've done the same thing. So when the shield power-up is killed, we basically kill the P power-up and the super power-up. And you can see this is basically the pattern, right? So when you kill one, the other ones go away. And I think that's it.
Super weapon online.
So, yeah.
Extra ship.
All right. I hope that was super helpful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the description. And otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.